Hi and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second session of this ORK workshop. We hope that the first session was very fun and informative, and we'll try our level best to make this session fun and informative as well. The disclaimers for this workshop remains the same. Keep your use the raise hand option in the Microsoft Teams to ask any questions or doubts if you have any, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. We have our presenters with us today. Myself, Kushal. We have Avinav, Nirvik, Anish, Anshul, and Advait. And without any further delay, we'll start with this workshop. Thank you. So let's begin with the recap of what we did yesterday. So we started off with the with knowing what rockets are and what exactly rocketry is. These were the slides which were presented yesterday. Then we quickly moved on to what sounding rockets are and how they are different from the orbital rockets. Next up was moving on to the software, about which this workshop is all about. And then we moved on to the some of the basic internal and external components of the rocket. And next up was the payload, which was explained in detail by Anshul. And then the aerodynamic subsystems were done yesterday, and we ended with the avionics subsystem yesterday. So we'll start off with the structures. Structures today we'll be having the structures and the propulsion subsystem in detail. So we'll start off with the structure subsystem. Just give me a minute. I'll share my screen. Someone just let me know when you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So would anyone like to answer like what basically the structure system of the rocket is? Anyone can just give a brief about it. I won't be able to see the hands if they are raised. So if like
Yeah. Achman has his hand raised.
yeah, Ajman.
Yeah, so there's the basic like components, external components of a rocket are there's a nose cone, and then
Yeah.
there are body tubes which have
Yes.
the different components, internal
Yes.
components, and then there's a boat tail,
Yes.
and then there are fins, which are I think optional, but there are fins,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's it.
So you
That's how.
remember yesterday's workshop quite well, right?
Yeah, I actually
Yeah.
wrote everything down. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, basically the structure subsystem is the subsystem which designs all of these components, runs simulations on them, and selects the materials most importantly for all these components. Now, I'll like to ask you all a question. What materials do you think that a sounding rocket can be used? What materials can be used in a sounding rocket? Anyone?
Metals, carbon fiber.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. So you mentioned like two of the most important materials that are used in the sounding rockets and the material that we'll be using also. So before selecting materials, um, there is an important material selection criteria which I'll be explaining right now. So the basic criteria for material selection will be the apogee and the thrust. So say a rocket has an apogee of 500 feet as compared to a 10,000 feet rocket. A 500 feet rocket could do with wood or even cardboard body tubes for that matter. But we can't use wood or cardboard body tubes in the 10,000 feet rocket that we are designing currently. So as you increase the apogee and the thrust, the material has to become much more stronger to survive the drag force and all the thrust force that it will be experiencing while it is in flight. The next important aspect will be the weight of the material. Now, As someone rightly mentioned that metals can be used. Now, sounding rockets don't usually use metals as the body tubes, but as the internal components of the rocket. Now, why we don't use metals as the body tubes is simply because their weight is too high, and we can get a better strength to weight ratio by using composites. So that is another very important factor while doing material selection. Next comes the reusability of the rocket. Now, say you want to just use the rocket for just one fun purpose, just a single use rocket. So you can use PVC or something, which need not be reused later in a second flight. But if you need to have a reusable rocket, then using composites such as carbon fiber and glass fiber are very important. Now, the last important factor while doing material selection is the cost of the materials. Now, every rocket which is built by a team or an organization will have a budget to it. So the the budget allocated to material should not exceed, and there are several materials which can replace one another and give a better be, be, give a similar give similar mechanical properties while not increasing the cost much. So that is the last material selection criteria that we have. Now, keeping all these in mind, we'll be using glass fiber for the body tubes in the current ORK. The glass fiber material will be added a bit later into the ORK after I explain the all the internal components of the rocket as well. Now, moving to I have one more question for you. Now, composites can fit well for sounding rockets, but do you think that orbital rockets can use composites as well as their body tubes? If yes, why? And if no, again, why? Yes, anyone can answer.
Yeah, Akhil, is your hand raised? Was that last question or it's for this question?
No, my hand isn't raised. I guess it's a glitch.
Oh yeah, maybe. So anyone, if anyone knows the answer.
Yes, anyone.
Dheeraj has his hand up.
Yeah, I guess you can't use the same materials because for orbital rockets, the temperature variations would be too high for the composites to survive.
Okay, that's there. But yes, okay, that's correct. And anything else? Any other reason? Think in terms of the material criteria selection that I just mentioned. I mentioned 4, right?
They might be expensive.
Composites are very expensive to use in full-scale rockets.
Yeah, but the metals that the orbital rockets use are much more expensive than the composites that we'll be using here. Apart from that, like the cost is the least important, I think, in while looking at orbital rockets. So, like the first three criteria that I mentioned regards to that.
Could it be the weight to structural something ratio?
Again, composites are much lighter. Okay. So it was the first one that I mentioned, the apogee and the thrust. As someone mentioned that in orbital rockets the temperature variation is too high for the composites to survive. That's exactly correct. See, while going from Earth to space, right? So the rocket will be going from temperatures anywhere from between -50 to several hundred degrees high, right? And and this temperature change will be in very few minutes, right? So during these temperature changes, if we use composites, these materials become very brittle, and they can easily crack on any vibration of the motor or any impact if it faces in flight. So we refrain from using composites for the body tubes in the in the orbital rockets. Now the materials that are used there are mainly there are two materials that are used there. It is titanium and aerospace grade aluminum alloy. Now, why we use them is that one of the main reasons is the thrust. So sounding rockets have thrust in the low thousands region, say from 5,000 to a maximum of 20,000. Most of the sounding rockets, and the Falcon 9 rocket of SpaceX has a Falcon 9 engine has a thrust of 8 million newtons. So that's almost 1,000 times the thrust provided in a sounding rocket. So the material has to be strong enough to bear this thrust as well. So the material that we use in sounding rockets are usually aerospace grade aluminum and titanium alloys. Now there is another problem with this. Um, like we can't just use the just the metals for the outer fuselage of the orbital rockets. Does anyone know why? This is related to temperature again. I'll give you that. Okay, so I'll continue.
And Akhil
Yeah.
has his hand up.
Okay.
Because of constant temperature changes, the metal can expand and and then when it becomes cold, it can cause cracks to develop or creases to develop in between two metal panels.
Yeah.
There could be gaps.
Yeah. This might be a possibility, but this is all tackled in the design phase of the sounding rockets. So this is not one of the main reasons. So the one of the main reasons is this. Can you all figure out what this is? It's the Dragon capsule, right? One of the most recent launches of SpaceX. So here you can see the whole outer fuselage of the rocket has been burnt off, right? This is because of the high re-entry temperatures. And down you can see there are some black tiles which are put. So these are the silica and glass reinforced tiles which help during re-entry temperatures and prevent any melting of the fuselage. So yes, basically these are the main reasons why we don't use composites in the outer fuselage of the rocket and keep them limited to the internal components, because they won't face the harsh extremities of the outer atmosphere. So orbital rockets use composites only for the internal components of their rocket. Now moving on to the internal components of the sounding rocket. These were some of the components that I mentioned yesterday while explaining them in briefly. So I'll go in detail and why I'll go in detail for all these components and why they are used. So first up is the thrust plate. So can anyone point out which one is the thrust plate in these photos? It's obviously in the right one, but which component?
Yeah, Achman had his hand up.
No, that was before, but I think it's the blue one.
Yeah, it's correct. And do you remember the reason I mentioned why we use a thrust plate? Achman?
To manage basically this is the place where the fuel will come out, right?
No, the fuel comes out from the opposite side.
Oh,
To the
okay.
nozzle.
So
Yes, this
I'm
is in the
confused.
upper parts of the. Okay, so the thrust plate will. So see, the sounding rockets will have the motors which burn for only, like, they have a burn time of only 3 to 4 seconds. Okay, max to max 4 to 5 seconds. So so they provide a very large thrust in a very small span of time. So there will be a huge amount of impulse imparted to the rocket, and we can't just let this whole force pass through the rocket without checking it and dissipating it slowly. So what a thrust plate does is it is made of a very strong material, and it is the first impact bearer of the whole force that the motor of the rocket exerts, and it slowly passes it to the upper parts of the rocket through the fuselage. You can see the holes that are made right on the left and right. This is a section view. So there will be 4 holes, but you can see only 2 of them because it's a section view. So these are the holes from where the force gets transferred to the fuselage. So the fuselage is not shown here, but I have it in a later slide, so I'll be explaining it later. So any guesses on which material we can use for a thrust plate? Again, keeping in mind the material criteria selection that I mentioned before.
Yeah, Achman.
Steel probably, because it's very strong.
Yes, steel will be a good material, but yes, it can be used. But again, we have to reduce the weight of the rocket, right? Otherwise, we can't put other components, because we then won't attain the target apogee of the rocket. So we don't usually use steel for the thrust plate, but we use a aluminium alloy. And the one that we'll be using here will be aluminium 6061. Now the 6061 is a grade of aluminium alloy which has very good thermal, mechanical, like the thermal and mechanical properties. Some of the mechanical properties to mention will be the shear strength, the tensile strength, and the compressive strength. So what aluminium gives us is a very light material, as well as properties good enough to support our cause, but not better than steel, so as to say. So the material that we'll be using for the thrust plate will be an aluminium alloy, which I'll be adding like right after this slide in the ORK. Now the next component will be the damper. Again, I'll ask, can someone figure out where the damper is in this one?
Yeah, Shushant raised his
Shushant.
hand.
The pink portion.
Yes, correct. And do you know the use of damper? It's like
Is it used to?
Yeah.
Is it used to reduce the impact of the force that comes on the thrust plate?
Not exactly, but think in terms of the damping means, like, you can say that you figured that out with the name, but the damper basically dampens out the vibrations of the motor. So the motor basically ignites a solid fuel usually, and then produces a gases which exert out which move out through the nozzle, right? And since these are gases, there will be a lot of vibrations produced by the gases, right? So we can't let this whole vibrations pass to the upper portions of the rocket, where the sensitive components in the avionics section and the payload sections is, right? So we need to dampen all these vibrations, and hence we use a damper just above the motor, so that we can dampen as many vibrations as we can before passing it on to the upper components of the rocket. Now, any guesses on which material we can use here as a damper? Because it is a damper, right? We need to have very high vibration absorbing properties. So in regards to that, does anyone know any material?
Akhil has his hand.
Yes.
We can use rubber or similar material.
Yes, rubber is a good material, but but usually we use a WPC, that is wood plastic composite, or just normal wood, depending on how big the motor is. So the material that we'll be using here is WPC. Next up is the bulkhead on the left top side. Now again, what is the use of a bulkhead, if anyone can answer? Okay, so the bulkheads are mainly the components which on which the in which the whole specific components of the bay are mounted to. So these bulkheads are present in every bay, and say the avionics mount, we can't just put it there in the avionics bay, right? So we mount the avionics on the bulkhead. So these are present in every section of the rocket, and they are specifically designed to serve the purpose for that section. Again, we'll be using aluminum for this because they too face the G forces in the rocket while in rocket flight, and also some thrust force. Moving on to the centering rings. Now, does anyone know what the centering ring? What is the use of a centering ring?
Yeah, Sushant.
Is it used to keep the rocket in its trajectory?
Indirectly, yes, but
Yeah, Achman also has an answer. Let's listen to that first.
Is
yes.
it to like make the whole fuselage sturdy?
Chat says it's to stabilize the motor. So
Yes,
Even Akhil
chat.
has his hands up.
Okay.
yeah,
Yes, Akhil.
I don't have my hand up. I don't know why
yeah,
it's
it's a
happening.
glitch
It's
code
okay.
one.
It's okay. You can try,
Yeah.
Akhil. Centering ring. It is
To
quite
nullify,
self-explanatory.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the various sections of the rocket, it will, keep it in place.
But we have bulkhead for that, right? We mount the components on the bulkhead. So that will
Dheeraj, I
keep.
think, has another answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the centering ring is used to keep the payload in the center of the section so that the center of gravity doesn't change.
Yeah. That is for some specific payloads, but that is not a general use of a centering ring. Centering ring, as someone mentioned in the chat, that it is used for keeping the motor stable, right? So that is exactly why we use it, and subsequently, as someone else also mentioned, that it keeps the rocket trajectory correct. So as I mentioned before, since all the fuel of the motor is burnt and there are exhaust gases, right? So there can easily be any thrust imbalance in the motor. Say ideally, the thrust has to be in the upward direction. You can see my mouse cursor, right? It has to be vertically upwards. But due to any thrust imbalance, say it goes in it turns 10 degrees or something. So there will be a the motor can move a bit because it is not, it is not prevent nothing is preventing its radial motion, right? So that's why I put the centering ring so that the motor does not turns from its axis. So again, since we need a good compressive property over here as well as good thermal properties, we again go for aluminium 6061 over here. So now let's move on to the Open Rocket software. Has everyone downloaded the ORK file which was left at yesterday? It was uploaded in the chat. Someone can just confirm.
Or else, if anyone has not been able to open that, please raise your hand. You can address it.
You just keep the file downloaded. I'll tell you how to open it. Okay. So we can't directly click on this file.
One second. Priyansh,
Can you
Are you
send
talking
it
about
again?
the file that you made yesterday or the software one?
yeah,
The
for
file that we made yesterday.
No, I don't have it.
It's in the chat. See, it's
Okay, I'll take it.
yeah, it's in the chat. Let me know when you have downloaded it.
yeah, Priyansh, you had some problem. Yeah, Priyansh.
I got it cleared. Oh, sorry, I got it cleared.
Okay, cool.
So should I start with the ORK then? Okay, so you can't directly open the file by clicking on it. You'll have to go to the Open Rocket software and click on open. Then wherever you have saved it, just click on that and open the file. So this was where we left off yesterday. We had the body tubes added to the rocket, we had the avionics and the payload. So as I mentioned before, we will be using glass fiber for the body tubes and the nose cone and the boat tail. So I'm gonna put glass fiber as the material. Now the way to do this is to click on the component that you have added and go to the component material. Now you can see there are several materials over here, right? You can use any one of them, and if you are using something that is not over here, right? Say the fiberglass, it is here. So I'll be using fiberglass over here, but as I mentioned, for the WPC, I'll be using, or for the damper, I'll be using WPC, right? And I can't find WPC over here. So you can make your own materials by clicking on custom, naming it whatever you want to, and putting the density of the material as well. And check or uncheck this option to have it saved in the ORK if you wish to. So that's there.
How can we add a new material? We lost your voice there.
Okay. So you click on custom over here in the component material, right? If you don't find anything over here, you click on custom and name whichever material you want and add the density over here. And if you want it to be stored permanently in the laptop, in the ORK software that is installed in the laptop, you just click this and then add it. So it will show up over here. So yeah, as I mentioned, we'll be using fiberglass for this one. And there we go. And there is something called as component finish as well. Can you all see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So what component finish basically means is that once you have manufactured the component, you can either leave it like as it was there during the manufacture, after the manufacturing, and there will be some surface irregularities. So if you have left in real life after you have manufactured, and if you have left it as what it was after manufacturing, you can keep it on rough. And if you use sandpaper to finish it off, you can use a unfinished surface. And if you use smooth paint, regular paint and polish, there are options over here as well. So we'll be going for regular paint in this one and click close. So this has been updated, as you can see. Now the nose cone is of fiberglass. It has regular paint, and the length, diameter, wall thickness, now the wall thickness again. This is 0.2 centimeter, right? So that is 2 mm. And how we decide this is by doing simulations. And this can't be just any random value. We'll have to do separate simulations for deciding the wall thickness of this, and subsequently putting it in the ORK. Now I'll do that for all the bays. You can follow along. Now you can see as I'm doing this, the center of gravity is changing because cardboard has a density of 0.68 and fiberglass has density of 1.85. So the weight of the rocket is increasing. Okay, so now we are done with the external parts. We have put materials for all of them, and we'll move on to adding the internal parts of the rocket. The ones which I mentioned were the thrust plate, the damper, the bulkhead, and the centering rings. So let's start off with putting the damper and the thrust plate. So these two are directly above the motor, right? So these will be located in the motor bay. So how to do this is click on the motor bay, then it will activate all these options. And since we don't have an explicit option for a damper, we use a bulkhead option. And because this software only uses the mainly the weight of the component, we can use this. We can use the bulkhead option. So we have a WPC bulkhead. The thickness of this will be 3 centimeter, and the diameter for this will be 13.2. Now, why I'm keeping the diameter lesser than the diameter for the body tube is because will be explained in this section later, and we'll move it to near the top of the bay. Now we have to add the thrust plate as well. Now the material used here will be aluminium. Again, this is not a 6061 material, but since it only takes the weight and the densities are same, almost the same, we can use the aluminium component here. Now again, the thickness of this will be 1.5, and I am directly putting this because we already know by simulations what thickness will be apt for this. But while making a new rocket from scratch, you'll have to do simulations in a separate software to figure out how much of a thickness will be safe for using the rocket. Now let's put the centering rings as well. Again, this will be of aluminium, and the thickness will be 1.5. Now I'm keeping ideally the inner diameter of the centering ring should be equal to the outer diameter of the motor, right? But
Yeah,
since we have
Kushal, chat says you need to go a little bit slow. They are following along, I guess.
okay. So if someone could just confirm whether when they are done with this, so I'll continue along. I'll wait till then, and if you all have any questions or anything till now, you can ask.
One question chat had is they mentioned clay for the material of the dampener. So if you could address that as well.
Okay, so near the motor, right, there will be a lot of heat generated, and clay doesn't have good thermal properties, so it can just melt off. So that's why and that's the main reason that we don't use clay as such. Whenever you all are done, just let me know so I can continue with the ORK. Any other questions then?
Yeah, Kushal, I think you can continue.
Okay. So now ideally the centering ring should the inner part of the ring should have the diameter equal to the outer diameter of the motor, right? But since we don't have the motor inserted yet, I'll keep the inner diameter as 0. Means the ring is completely filled just as a bulkhead I had shown there, and this will be edited later when the motor is added. Now coming to the centering rings. Now the centering ring, the number of centering rings that you need to put in a rocket completely depend on the length of the motor you have. Now here you can see 2 centering rings would be good enough for keeping this motor in radially centered in its axis. But say if you have a longer motor, you need to keep on adding centering rings, and again you'll have to do simulations so as to check whether the whether the centering rings that you have used is suited for flight. Again, now I'll add another centering ring over here.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Did we use the same specifications for the other centering ring too?
Yes, exactly same. 1.5 centimeter.
Thank you.
Yeah. So now that we have most of the components in the rocket there, now the question arises, uh, how do we join all of them? And before that, as you might have noticed that we have different body tubes for each bay. Now we could have easily done a single whole body tube instead of having this separate body tube. So as to save the pain of having to attach them separately. Any specific reason that why we don't have a longer tube and have smaller sections of the same length per tube?
I think Achman has something to say.
Yes, Achman.
Yeah, if it is modular, then like if one of the component fails or there is some damage, you can easily like remove it and repair it and put it back, or just replace it instead of
Yes.
having to build
Yeah.
the whole thing again.
Correct. That is one of the that is one good reason. And anything else apart from that? Think in terms of how like if you compress a longer tube and uh, compare that with if you compress a more even like a smaller tube, more evenly ratioed length by diameter tube. Think in that terms.
Yeah, if there's one long tube, then it is more likely to like have bends in it.
Yes, exactly. So buckling is one of the main reason that we don't use a single body tube and we divide the body tube into separate sections. So I'll just explain why. I'll show it with help of my PPT. So here you can see these are two body tubes. They have the same diameter and just the lengths are different and the forces that have been applied on both of them are exactly the same. Now you can evidently see how much a longer tube buckles compared to a shorter one. This one almost doesn't buckle at all, and you can see how much displacement the longer tube has. So this is one of the main reasons that we don't use a uh, single single body tube. Another reason that we don't use a single body tube is the ease of assembly. Now, if you have separate body tubes for each bay, we can we can easily go around assembling it, right? But if you have a single long one, then how are you going to reach the middle portion of the tube where you need to attach some bulkhead, let's say some bulkhead or something. So so that's why that is one more reason that we don't use the single body tube. Now I think I missed adding bulkheads in the ORK, so I'll just go back to that and we'll add bulkheads as well. Is everyone back on the ORK?
Yeah, I think they all are.
Okay, so again, as I mentioned, we'll be using aluminium for bulkheads as well. The thickness will be 1.5 centimeter and the diameter will be 13.2. And this on this the payload will be mounted. So this will be right below the payload. Now we'll have another bulkhead in the payload bay because the payload is from the top also it is attached to the another bulkhead. So we'll have the exact same bulkhead on the top of the payload as well. Guys, the speed is fine, right? Or do I need to slow down? Next bulkhead will be the avionics bulkhead, where the avionics will be mounted. Now we'll have a bulkhead for the recovery bay as well, where the recovery mechanism will come, and this will be added a bit later after I'm done with explaining the recovery as well. So we'll keep the bulkhead added there. Okay, so now we have the centering rings added, the damper added, the thrust plate added, and the bulkheads added. And the material for the whole outer body of the rocket is done. So let's move on to the presentation again. Now the next question is, how do we join the different, since we have different fuselages for every section of the rocket, any ideas on how we join them? As I mentioned before, I've left some space between the bulkhead and the fuselage, and I mentioned that this was for this will be explained in a later at a later point. So this has something related to that. Anyone? Okay, so there are several ways of joining the two fuselages together, and the method of joining, like the technical term for joining the fuselage together, is called coupling. So we have several types of coupling as well. There is something called as internal coupling, external coupling, and bulkhead coupling. So what internal coupling is that we have a similar structure to a body tube, as you can see over here in these three photos. The A and B are the body tubes, and the C part with the blue section, that is the coupler. So this has almost the same thickness as the body tube, and the outer diameter of this is equal to the internal diameter of the body tube. Now what we do is there slides in between exactly in between the two body tubes, and we bolt them together, as you can see in the first slide. This is how it's done, and this is mainly internal, so it doesn't messes up with the aerodynamics of the rocket, which is the case in the external coupling. Now external coupling is exactly the same, but it's on the outer part of the fuselage. So this causes a bit of a flow separation and some increased drag while the rocket is in flight. Now, why is there even a concept of external coupling when it messes up with the aerodynamics of the rocket? This is because internal coupling is a bit difficult to assemble, because we need to get to the internal parts of the rocket, and then we have to bolt it from outside, so which is a bit tedious work. So to tackle that, we have an external coupling option where you could have the exact same coupler, but it is external to the rocket. Now the advantages for these two types of coupling are that they are very lightweight, because they have the same material as that of the fuselage, and since this is, again, we'll be using fiberglass over here, so it is very lightweight and efficient. The third type of coupling that I mentioned here is bulkhead coupling. Now you know how internal and external coupling works, right? So any idea on how bulkhead coupling will work? As the name suggests, we'll be using bulkhead in this. So any ideas on that?
One second. Yeah, so Sushant and Achman want to say something. Achman will take your answer first.
Yes.
I think that two of the fuselages are connected to a common bulkhead.
Yes, that's exactly what bulkhead coupling means. So the bulkhead is kept in between exactly in between the two fuselages, and then it is bolted. But Achman, there is one big drawback to this. Do you have any idea how this is not feasible as such?
And if the other person wants, he can add to his answer if this is not satisfactory.
I think it must break more easily. It must get separated more easily.
No, that is not exactly why we don't use bulkhead coupling. And the other person who had his hand raised, would you like to add on Achman's answer?
No, I'll answer this question. Does it? We don't use bulkhead because does it suffer forces from both the sides of the fuselages?
Not exactly. That will be the case in internal external coupling as well. But did you see that I had the bulkhead? Like in the ORK, you saw the thickness of the bulkhead as compared to the body tube, right? This was very thin, and we in such a thin bulkhead, it was 1.5 centimeter, right? And if we want to make 5 mm diameter hole for bolting it to the, we need to make two 5 mm diameter holes, right, for bolting it to the upper and lower fuselage. So do you think a 15 millimeter bulkhead can support two holes in that? The holes will be too close to each other, right? And now the holes will have a chance of shearing off. So to prevent this from happening, we'll need to have much thicker bulkheads. So now to accommodate two 5 mm bulkheads, we'll need to have a bulkhead of at least which is of the thickness 40 mm, that is 4 centimeter, and that is almost 2.5 times the thickness of the bulkhead that we had. And since the bulkhead is made of metal, this will lead to a lot of increase in weight if we go for bulkhead coupling. So that's why we avoid bulkhead coupling. Now the body tubes will be joined by internal coupling, as I mentioned. But what about the nose cone and the boat tail? Do you think a coupler can be used on them?
It can't be because of the shape.
Yes, that's correct. But yeah, so we can have a coupler of that shape, but this is mainly because of manufacturing difficulties. Now, to make another coupler of the exact shape of the internal part of the taper of the boat tail and the nose cone, right? We'll need to have another mold that is manufactured, and we'll have to manufacture a separate coupler for that. So instead of that, what we do is we add shoulders. So we only extend the part of like the part where the nose cone and the boat tail meet the fuselage. We extend that into a cylindrical thing, and that is then bolted to the fuselage.
Yeah, Kushal, chat says that you can use bulkhead coupling on nose cone and boat tail.
So see, the bulkhead again. Think about it this way: the bulkhead is cylindrical, but the nose cone starts to taper as soon as, like, from the starting point itself. So how will that bulkhead fit inside the nose cone? See, the bulkhead will be a bit bigger than this, right? And how will this fit into this? And also there will be, even if you do like somehow have a smaller bulkhead or anything, there will be a certain gap that is left between the places that you have screwed on the body tubes and the nose cone. So that's why bulkhead coupling is not really possible. And one more reason why we don't use bulkhead coupling over here is because the we don't have any use for bulkheads in the boat tail and the nose cone. And if we put a bulkhead in the boat tail, it will cause a hindrance to the nozzle, right? And all the exhaust gases won't be able to come out, so the rocket won't be able to fly. So yeah, and the last thing that remains to be attached, it is the fins of the rocket. Any ideas on how we can attach the fins to the rocket? Guys, anyone can answer. This is a bit more easier than the other attachments.
Chart says internal bolts.
Internal bolts is right. And what else?
Can't it be like molded into the fuselage itself?
You can manufacture
Uh,
it with the fuselage.
Yeah, that way.
Okay, that won't be that I think it won't be possible. But I'll come to that in the manufacturing section on
Yeah,
how
yeah.
the fuselages get manufactured. So then we will do the
Navyana
reason.
has a hand up.
Yes, Navyan.
Can we use something like slots or something?
Yeah, that's exactly how internally it will be bolted. Anything else? So something more simpler and basic than these, like making slots and all. Say
glue
if the yeah, you can glue it exactly. So you can either have slots inside these, or you can glue it. And there are several other ways. Like most most rockets use these two and like design their own specific way of attaching the fin. So the fins that the fin attachment here in the rocket that we are making currently, as someone mentioned, that it is slotted and then it is internally bolted. So you can see there are clamps over there. Uh, they are like an L, correct? So there are on all the four sides, on all the four fins, there will be two clamps for each fin, and those clamps will be bolted both to the fuselage and the fins as well, as you can see. Any doubt on this slide or till this point? Is this clear how the fin is attached in this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the bulkheads and the thrust plate and centering rings and the internal parts, as I mentioned before, they'll simply be bolted to the fuselage. So let's move on to add the couplers and the
One second, Kushal.
yes.
There's a question in chat that how are they bolted from the inside?
From the inside, like could you please elaborate? See, both the L between the L channels, right? Between the L-shaped clamps. So between them, you can see the slot. The fin extends a bit into the fuselage. So you put a bolt through here, and then and you screw, like you put a screw through here and you bolt it, and so that will be done on all four sides. And these L clamps will be bolted to the fuselage directly from the outside, as it is more convenient. Or you can do it from the inside, but again, assembly problems. Did that clear your doubt, or?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So should I move on to the ORK to add the shoulders and the add the shoulders in the nose cone and the boat tail? So here we are back to the ORK. So as I mentioned before, the nose cone and the boat tail, the transition thing that we are using here, both will have shoulders. So how to do this is click on the nose cone component, and there is a tab called shoulder over here. So there you can go to the shoulder, put in the diameter of the shoulder that you want, the outer diameter. So that will be 13.6 over here. And the length of this will be 6 centimeter, and the thickness will be the same as the thickness of the nose cone. So that will be 0.2 centimeters. So as you can see over here, we have got a shoulder that has been added to the nose cone. And now what this end cap option means is that the end of the shoulder will be capped, basically like a cylinder that is closed from one end. Currently, it is a cylinder that is open from both ends, but if you click on the end cap option, the cylinder will be like, it will be just like a cylinder that is closed from one end. So this is done, and we'll do the similar part on the transition also. Again, clicking on transition, going to shoulder. Now the diameter for this will be 13.6, length 6 centimeter, and thickness will be 0.2. Now aft shoulder, this is the fore shoulder. The aft shoulder means the shoulder will come on the other side of the transition. So we don't want the shoulder on the other side. So we have gone for the fore shoulder. Now we have basically now the bolts. So the bolts, they can't be modeled in this OpenRocket software. So there is a separate method of including the weight of the bolts in this model, and that I'll be explaining a bit later. So now all the components have been added. Most of the components have been added. They have been attached to the rocket. Now let's move on to the in-flight loading conditions of the rocket. What forces the rocket faces while it is in flight? Would anyone like to give a try on what, like, any of the components will face what kinds of forces during flight of the rocket? This is the section view of the motor bay, the whole motor bay.
Yeah, chart says drag, but they haven't mentioned it where, and stress also.
Yeah, but stress, obviously stress will be there, drag will be there, but where and how? Like, not all the components will face drag, right?
Yeah, Sushant, you can speak.
Drag force on the fins.
Correct, that is there. Fins, okay, and also one more place.
Ashman also has something to add.
Yeah, the orange part will experience a stress upwards, like it will be compressed.
Correct.
Is the silver part is the main motor, right?
Yeah, the silver part is where the fuel will go for the motor, and the orange part is the casing of the motor. So yes, correct. Oh. The orange part will face thermal stresses, and also, as you correctly mentioned, compressive and tensile and shear and all kinds of, because there are, as I mentioned before, these are gases, right? So you can't really be sure on how they will obviously go out from here, but internally it is a bit unstable. So what else?
Chart says improper combustion.
Yeah, improper combustion. So where will that force act?
Yeah, Achman, you want to add something?
Chat, if you could unmute your mic. Yeah, Achman, sorry.
The place where the fins are connected, it will basically experience some kind of a torsional force. It will try to be separated, basically, because the fins are experiencing a drag while the body isn't as much. So the fins will experience a torque.
Yes, correct. So it will face a downward force, and the inner part of the fins will have a stress that is acting upon them. And
chart also says gravitational force.
But gravitational force is not a specific loading condition, right? That is not because of the rocket flight. That is something that everything on Earth experiences. I'm looking something that is specific to rocket while it is in flight. You mentioned something about combustion instability. So could you just, like, that will cause a force that is acting somewhere. I mentioned something about centering rings. So yeah, you can see the centering rings, right? You can see my pointer. So these are the centering rings, these two. So the centering rings will have a compressive force on any one of the direction where the combustion instability has been taking place. and they will face basically a compressive force. So other than that, the thrust plate has been mentioned several times. So thrust plate is one of the main load-bearing components, and that will be the first load-bearing component for all the thrust that is being acted upon by the rocket. Now, can you see the small holes that have been made here in the thrust plate? So these are where the bolts will go in, right? And these bolts are these are the main components which transfer the thrust from here to the fuselage. So again, these bolts also play a very important role because they have to carry the whole thrust that is exerted by the rocket and transfer it to the fuselage. So again, these are one of the main thrust, the stress bearing components. Apart from that, as someone rightly mentioned, drag on the fins, also drag on the body tubes, and thrust on the body tubes. Now fins experience another force that is called flutter. Does someone know what flutter is?
Sideways swinging of the.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Left and right, like in this section view, it is towards you and then away from you. So,
Yeah, and also the whole fuselage can experience a spring-like compression.
It is not.
Because the lower part suddenly accelerates while the upper part has its own inertia.
Yeah, so that's exactly why there is the thrust plate, right? So that this force gets a little bit slowly dissipated to the fuselage. Yeah,
Okay.
so there is the fin flutter, as you correctly mentioned, and the last load-bearing component, the main load-bearing component, is the damper, the pink one that you can see, which takes up all the vibrational loading of the motor. So that's basically that. If you all don't mind, can you all just give me 1 second? I'm sorry for the interruption. You can see you are back to the slide where we left off, right? Hello.
Yeah, Kushal, we can see this slide.
Okay. So yeah, those are the main stress-bearing components of the rocket. Let's move on to manufacturing. Now, I mentioned that we'll be using glass fiber for manufacturing the fuselages of the rocket. And in a previous photo, I have shown how glass fiber looks like. It's basically a sheet, right? So how do you think we are gonna manufacture glass fiber, or as a matter of fact, the carbon fiber sheet as well? How are we gonna make it into a solid fuselage? Because these are sheets and they have the exact same properties as a bed sheet, right? The exact same. You get my point. So how do you think we are gonna manufacture those?
Priyansh,
I had a doubt actually. In the present
Yes.
slide, this loop thing that can be seen on the top, is it just to hold the motor at the place, or something else?
This was taken from another CAD of the rocket, and this was something to do with the like it's not to hold the rocket, hold the motor as such, but it's for some reasons in the payload section, in the payload bay. This is for some
Okay.
use in the payload.
So how is the motor casing actually holding? Like center rings are only to
Yeah. Okay.
keep it in
So
center. How?
correct. So we have a bolt that goes through here, but the upper part that you can see, right? This serves both the purpose of the holding the motor as well as some specific reason or some
Okay.
specific purpose in the payload bay. So we
Oh.
do have a bolt over there in the exact same position.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, back to the manufacturing of the composites part. Any ideas from anyone?
Saicharan has Akhil had their hand up. Saicharan, go ahead
Yes.
first.
Do we use some kind of a resin to bond the fibers
Correct.
on top of the aluminium?
Correct. Not exactly. Yeah, we can do it on top of aluminium, but again, aluminium is a bit. You mean to say you make a mold and then you put the fibers around and you lay up, right?
Yeah, some kind of resin we used to put the glass fiber on another object to make it strong.
Yeah. So the resin plays an important role in making the fiber strong, but usually you don't use metal molds. You need to make a cylinder, right, where you of the diameter of the fuselage, of the ID of the fuselage, so that when you put the fibers around, you can get the exact inner diameter as that of the fuselage. So we usually don't use metal molds for that purpose, because they'll be expensive and heavy. A wooden mold can do the job exactly the same way as a metal mold would. But yeah, we put the sheets and then you put the resin in between the layers of the sheet. So that is basically how you manufacture the body tubes, and that is the same you for the couplers as well. You make a mold, but this time it's an internal mold where you do the layup internally for making the couplers, and same is the process for making the boat tail and the nose cone, where again you'll be making the molds, putting the fibers inside and then putting resin on it. So now moving on to the internal machine parts, such as the thrust plate, the mounts that I mentioned yesterday, but I'll be explaining again today, and the centering rings and all. So first of all, the metals, as I mentioned, some 6061. So 6061 is again a grade of aluminium, right? So there are several grades in the metals, such as there is 60 series, 30 series, 70 series, 50 series. There is all kinds of series where each series has their own common properties. So in all these, the properties change drastically if you change the percentage of the alloying element even by 1% or even by 0.5%. So you can choose from a host of different materials for the internal manufactured parts, but one main thing that you have to keep in mind while the manufacturing process is the ease of availability. Say if the material is not easily available, then obviously it will be expensive. So you go for a material which is just as strong, and but it is much more easily available. As I mentioned before, aluminium. And one more important thing is the workability of the metal. A diamond cuts a diamond, right? That's a very famous saying. So you have a material that is just as strong as diamond, and you want to manufacture it. So basically, manufacturing will be you'll be using a cutting tool that will remove the extra material and make the contours that you require as you desire. But if the material is very strong, you won't be able to cut the material only, and the cutting tool itself will break. So another important factor to be taken into account is the workability of the material, and aluminium fits that perfectly as well. Now, the last thing that you need to keep in mind is the manufacturing of complex geometries. Now, if you the more complex the geometry gets, the higher the number of manufacturing processes you'll need to take place that will need to take place on the material, and the cost also will increase subsequently. So design which is kept as basic as possible will be more suited. Now these are some of the machine parts of the rocket. The recovery mechanism, the CubeSat, that's the payload mount, and the avionics mount. So how do you think these will be manufactured?
Yeah, Kushal, we have some time constraints, so it will be better if you could just move along.
Okay. So there is something called a subtractive manufacturing, where you'll take a material. Suppose this is suppose we need to manufacture this piston, right? So we'll take a cylinder which is available, and then using a cutting tool, we'll have the cylinder cut into the desired shape that we want. So that is called something as subtractive manufacturing, where we use a bigger stock and then subtract material from it to get the desired shape. Now, if the component is very complex to do via subtractive manufacturing, there is something called as 3D printing or additive manufacturing, where you put layer on layer so that you get the complex shape manufactured easily. This all again depends on the cost and the complexity of the material. Now again, we'll go back to the ORK and we'll add a recovery mechanism and put the material for the avionics mount as well. So for recovery mechanism, you go to the recovery bay, you add a mask component and you select recovery hardware over here. The length of this will be 10 centimeter and the diameter again will be 10 centimeter. This will be near the bottom of the component and the mass will be approximately 300 grams. We are done with the recovery hardware and we need to change the material for the avionics mount to the aluminium. Now as shown in the figure before, that was a three rod avionics mount, and that exactly has been done over here. You can see there is a 3 rod mount over here. Now coming to the last part of this section. Okay, so before that, there is something called as there is something called shape optimization. So I'll show you the slide and I'll ask you what you can infer from this. This is a centering ring. Anyone who can tell me what this is? This will be the centering ring that the ORK model considers, right? So
yeah, Sushant has an answer. Yeah.
Does the left one have a torque acting on it or any force that turns it?
Not a torque, but a sideway force that will be acted by the motor on it. So as you can see, the load path will be as shown in the contour here, right? So instead of having a centering ring that is just filled with that's just exactly like a ring, since we know the load path, how the load will be transferred, we can have a centering ring like this, and this won't affect the factor of safety at all. See, because the load path you can see by the contour there, and we can remove the material from where the load is not being transferred. So this is called as weight optimization. And if you have a centering ring that looks like this, the ORK model, there is no way in the ORK model to have a centering ring looking like this. But since this has less mass than the one that is being considered in the ORK model, that is calculated just by multiplying the volume of the component by the density, we'll have to do something called as a weight override. So you click on override mass. So the current mass is 588 grams, as you can see, but remove the lot of material from there. So we'll change it to 300 grams for both of these. So this is again a very important aspect in manufacturing, where you need to change the material weight after you get the actual manufactured components and after you have optimized them to best reduce the weight. Now this brings me to the last part of my section, that is the assembly of the rocket. So finally what you do is you assemble all the fuselage, you assemble all the sections in the fuselage together, and you bolt them. Now, the things to keep in mind for these is that the mounts, the payload and the avionics mount need to be assembled very carefully, because these are the, okay, yeah, Avinav will share the screen. Just a minute. Yeah. So the avionics and the payload mount will need to be assembled very carefully, because they house all the sensitive components of them of the rocket, and they need to be secured properly. Another thing while looking at assembly of the rocket is the time required for assembly, because the battery that we put in the avionics and the payload, right, that has a very low time of operation. So we need to assemble the rocket as fast as we can, so that the battery doesn't drain out before we even launch the rocket. Again, the modular assembly, that is having separate fuselage pieces, helps a lot in this. So these are some of the rockets of the team in Manipal, Thrust MIT, assembled rockets of the team, and yeah, they are on the launch rod, ready to be launched into the sky. So yeah, that's all from the structures subsection, and now we'll be moving on to the propulsion. Thank you.